Welcome into this episode of How to Ride a Roller Coaster. Today my guest is the one and only Jessica Vittorio. She is the founder of the law office of Jessica Vittorio. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am fantastic.
You made it through the intro without laughing.
It was this close.
The
this
first
close.
task of the podcast is done. Taste it. It's like making your bed every day when you wake up. Like the first thing's done now, so it's all downhill.
That's the hardest one too. That's the hardest one because I have people like you on there that I know are making a face on the other side. So it gets me every time.
I told you I wasn't gonna make direct eye contact through video because I was trying not to mess you up.
Well, thank you. Well, no. So welcome in. So tell everybody. I mean, we've met several times. Have known each other a while, especially in the entrepreneurship startup world of Dallas. And you really work specifically with a lot of entrepreneurs and founders. So tell us more about what all your kind of day-to-day looks like.
Yeah, so I wear a lot of different hats in my day-to-day world. I am founder of a private firm that does primarily corporate transactions, if we were going to classify it. So what that means is really anything involving an entity or a business that is not litigation-based. So if you're in the middle of a dispute, if you're going to trial, I am not the person that's likely going to help you out with that. But all of the day-to-day operational stuff, setting up a business, running the business, sometimes fundraising for the business, all of that kind of stuff is stuff that I help with. I also do a lot of government relations work. So I lobby on behalf of some organizations for a variety of topics. And that's something else that I think a lot of founders don't really think about. I was just having that conversation with the partner at an accelerator that I work with today about the impacts of policy on entrepreneurs and startups. So I do a little bit of that, and then I work with a nonprofit, the Dallas Eviction Advocacy Center, and for that I actually am in court. I like to say that I'm playing a real lawyer in that role because I actually put on a suit and go to court, which is a weird experience for me, having done transactions for almost a decade, but it's fun. I like it.
Do you like that aspect whenever you do get called and you do have to go to court?
You know, I wouldn't want to do it all the time, but the role that I'm filling in kind of that context is helping low-income families primarily that are being evicted. And so we're helping them kind of navigate the eviction process, and we get to work with a lot of great families, and honestly a lot of great landlords and opposing counsel. So it really is a positive experience for the most part. Occasionally it gets a little bit confrontational, which is much more like traditional litigation, and that is just not my vibe. I don't enjoy that, but everything else for the most part is fun.
So from the entrepreneurship standpoint, what do a lot of the people kind of come to you for? I mean, is it that beginning part, setting up the LLC, or is it maybe more in-depth questions that they just don't have answers to or can't find the answers to?
Yeah, so I think there's two groups. The first group is the really early stage founder that's just trying to get everything kind of settled, get the foundation laid so that they can build on top of that. And then the second group is the more established entrepreneurs and businesses that are at a point where maybe they don't want to hire someone full-time to be general counsel because that's a pretty big resource commitment from their end. But they have enough ongoing questions that they encounter on a day-to-day basis that they need someone available a little bit more consistently than just a one-off project. And those tend to be, the early stage clients are really entity focused, they're partnership focused, that's internal governance, things like that. Whereas the later stage clients are more day-to-day operational questions, a lot of HR, a lot of contract and third-party engagement questions, maybe some platform or technology questions, things like that. So the role that I'm filling in both of those can be very different, but ultimately, I answer the same questions probably 75-80% of my day. I love a good novel question. I love kind of the different aspects and the crazy things that I get to answer in the course of my job, but most entrepreneurs are dealing with the same questions every day.
Gotcha. Let me pause 1 second. I had this light right in front of me go out. So again, like I told you, it's always on me all the time. Give me 1 second. It never fails.
See light again.
I know. God. Just when you're trying to be professional here, it's like, no, just kidding. We're going to turn off and make, have nothing on your face.
Just shut it down completely.
Shut it down. This isn't, not happening.
It's okay. It's a coffee break.
Absolutely.
Coffee/water break. If I was smarter, I would be drinking water.
I can do coffee up until like 4 o'clock. After that, I mean, I can't do it later. I want to, I just can't.
I have ADHD, and so caffeine actually calms me down and helps me focus. And so I can drink it and go to bed immediately. So I will drink it until like 2 a.m.
Oh my God. Yep, color me jealous right
Here we
now.
go. Hope that.
All right, back to.
Fun fact, not medical advice. If this makes it into the episode.
Everybody that listens is like, well, look, here's the deal. It's 2 a.m. and I'm on coffee. She said I could do it. She said I could do it. I trust her. I'm listening to her.
I took nothing that she said out of this except for the coffee and ADHD comment. Holding her to that.
Amazon carts full of coffee.
I know, yeah.
It's fantastic.
Should be sponsored.
Heck yeah,
Me and coffee sponsor for this episode.
God, right?
Okay. I'll resend her. Do the 1, 2, 3 again.
Not 3, 2, 1ing this again. It's gonna be so much editing. Okay. Nope, it's on me still.
Okay.
I know, no, it's on me still.
That happened to me the other day. What was I doing? I can't even remember, but someone said, don't laugh. Oh, I was trying to get my Capital Access Pass, and so I had to get fingerprinted and photographed, and he's just about to take the photo, and he's like, don't laugh. And I was like, why would you say, like, I wouldn't have laughed if you didn't say that right now.
Nice.
Okay.
All right. So what are some of the things here in Dallas when it comes to, like, you know, the startup scene that you've kind of been most excited by? You know, because I mean, there are a lot of pitch competitions. There's all kinds of things that are happening, but it feels like Dallas in and of itself can kind of be things happening here, things happening there. It feels hard sometimes to rally everybody together. But what are some of those things that you feel kind of excited by?
I would say the first thing that I generally direct people to is that we have a couple of different corridors of entrepreneurship communities in DFW as a whole. And I think they all have their own kind of focus, they have their own specialties and coexist really well. But I do think it's important to find a proper place. So between Fort Worth and Dallas and Frisco, kind of North Dallas, Plano, Addison area, I think it's important to explore all of the stuff that's going on in all of those areas. They each, we could spend an hour talking about the accelerators that each of them have, the community spaces each of them have. They really are kind of distinct ecosystems. But, this is probably biased, but the number one thing I'm going to say every single year is going to be Dallas Startup Week.
Right.
I think, if you're new to the community, especially, David,
no, it's done. It's done.
Your light?
It's done. It's done. It's no more. Act like it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It's getting thrown in the trash. In the trash tonight. Yeah. Luckily, this is audio for the most part, so nobody's going to care. But yeah.
But they're just going to have to you're going to have to go and do some exposure increase. Yeah, so Dallas Startup Week, I think, is great because especially if you're new to the community and trying to find your place, it's one of the only times when all of those components of the DFW community as a whole really come together. Global Entrepreneurship Week, very similar to that. Also a good place to get a sense of what all of the resources and community infrastructure available are. I also think some of the more regular programming, like the Founders Live or the coffee clubs or the 1 Million Cups, all of those are great opportunities because it's those events. I love the one-off events, and there's a lot of really great annual events, biannual events, but I think it's those ones where you're seeing each other regularly, whether that's weekly or monthly, that really gives you the opportunity to connect with the same people over and over and start to build those relationships as opposed to it just being kind of a one-off in passing.
Yeah, I think that's great too. I mean, that was really one of the biggest things for me with Founders Live, and especially one of the things that kind of took a hit during COVID was, you could do a Zoom call, but it's just not the same. And then when we finally had that first event back where you could see those people that maybe you hadn't seen in a year and a half, you just have built such that relationship with them that, it's just, you couldn't wait to kind of get back to that.
Absolutely. I think the dynamic in person is really crucial. And I know, I certainly got accustomed to doing everything virtually during the pandemic, and I am a firm believer that there's a time and a place for that. Yeah. But for those who might be hesitant to want to have to go back out and the kind of hassle of having to get out and commute there and get there and all of that kind of stuff, I do think it's worth it to really commit to that experience and go in person, because I think you just inevitably get so much more out of it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So what made you go down the path of working with entrepreneurs? Is that something that you were kind of have always had? Was that entrepreneurial bug, or was it something else?
I do think that I'm naturally entrepreneurial. My mom owned a business my entire life. So my mom's been an entrepreneur my entire life. And really, I think the process of watching her own and grow a business growing up, when I worked for Congress, that was my first job out of law school, and I did that for a little while and had a really great experience, but decided I wanted to leave. And the first thing I thought of was I wanted to open my own practice. And I don't think that possibility would have occurred to me if I hadn't seen my mom running her business all of those years. I don't think we always realize the impact we're having on the people around us and the influence we're having on the people around us, whether it's your kids or your family members or friends or whoever. But that concept of entrepreneurship and the role that entrepreneurship can play, I think is something that I've just been around my entire life, and it was never really a question for me. I was personally really lucky and have been really privileged, to have that support and that infrastructure, because there were a million times I've owned a couple of companies now, and there's been a million times in all of them where I've wanted to stop at some point and been able to call my mom, and she's like, you could stop that. Because there have been a million times I've been like, I'm just going to stop and go work for someone else. I'm going to take a normal 9-to-5 job. And without question, without fail, every time she says, you can do that, but respectfully, you are terrible at working for other people. So you can do that, but it's going to last like 6 months tops, and then you're going to be back at it. And I love that about entrepreneurs, right? I love the chaos of entrepreneurship. I love being in like the depths of it. I respectfully say a lot of times that it's a dumpster fire, right? A lot of, especially early stage startup companies, are dumpster fires internally from a legal perspective, and I love the chaos of it. I always get to answer something different. I love the process of educating entrepreneurs, especially early stage entrepreneurs, and watching them kind of grow into that role. Yeah. And it's just over the years been such a privilege to get to work with so many amazing people that have these awesome visions for the world and do this like very little part to help them make that vision a reality.
From the education standpoint, what would be something that you would say to entrepreneurs who are in that and where everything's messy? They're probably not bookkeeping pros, so God only knows what it looks like. Here's a shoebox of some of the receipts I've kept, but not really all of them. Yeah. What would just be like some advice that you would give for that one?
I think the number one piece of advice I tend to give is very early on having some sort of written agreement with your co-founders or with your early stage team. I think there's this concept, and it's not even just in startups, it's human relationships in general, where they start and everything's going good and we're kind of living in this like pink cloud, this like rose-colored glasses scenario. Yeah. But conflict in human relationship, and just like in a business, is a when, not an if. It will at some point occur. And so the easiest way that you can handle and navigate that conflict is to make sure that y'all have an understanding of your relationship in writing up front. And along those same lines, and I've done a million posts and talks about this, but really being aware and mindful of who you're going into business with, I think, is the number one mistake people make. They don't take into account really the gravity of the relationship that they're entering into. At the risk of sounding cliche, starting an entity with someone really is like marrying that person. Yeah. I mean, you then have legal obligations to each other, and if y'all decide you want to walk away, it's not as simple as just kind of wiping your hands and leaving the situation. There are legal steps that have to be taken after that point to effectuate that termination. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's super complicated, but it does add a layer of complexity to that relationship that I think so many people kind of discount when they're making the decision about who their business partners are going to be.
Right. Yeah, and it feels like, you, as a founder, you're looking for a co-founder, or if you already have one, it's just this person that maybe innately does something well that you don't do well. They're the technical co-founder, I'm sales and marketing, whatever the case may be. But like you said, a lot of times that's kind of maybe even where that stops. It's like they're the yin to my yang from this standpoint of building a product. But when it comes to how we do business together, how we think we should spend the money, all of that kind of stuff, are there any and I don't want to say checklist because that would just be too black and white, but is there anything that founders could do, like just when thinking about their co-founder or potential co-founder, to kind of double check to make sure that they're maybe checking the right boxes?
Yeah, I think of it very similar to a marriage or a serious relationship in your personal life, right? Where do y'all see that business going long term? There are a million long-term visions for a business. Maybe I'm going into a business because I want to create a legacy company that I can hand down to my kids one day. Maybe you're going into business because you want to build something and in 3 to 5 years make a quick exit and make a lot of money and move on to the next thing. Both of those are perfectly acceptable, but if we're misaligned in that, then we're going to hit a point where we cannot continue to coexist and cooperate the business successfully. So what's your long-term plan and vision? What's your intention for the business? How do you envision decision-making taking place? How collaborative are you planning to be in kind of day-to-day operations? And then what's the long and short-term expectation of active engagement with the business? Because there is one subset of people that want to be actively engaged in managing their businesses from start to finish. And there's another subset that really just see themselves as a temporary manager of that business until they hit a point of revenue or success where they can bring someone else in to take over that function for them. So which are you? Because, I would say the most common point of frustration that I hear from co-founders is one or the other is not actively engaged to the extent that the other co-founder or co-founders thought that they were going to be. And so really clearly delineating what are the roles and expectations, how long is that going to be the role and expectation, and are y'all in alignment on that? I think if you have conversations about that, then you've probably taken, 60% of what is most likely to be your initial disagreements off the table.
From maybe a bookkeeping or like a CPA standpoint, what are some of the biggest maybe mistakes that you see some of these, earlier stage entrepreneurs doing?
Well, I'll say I think the number one mistake people make from a money standpoint is not separating out assets of individual businesses or personal assets. Ultimately, legal entities are a fiction, right? They are just things that we make up. Apple exists. I cannot touch Apple. I cannot talk to Apple. I cannot, interact with Apple directly. I can talk to an employee. I can buy a product. I can go to a building that Apple owns. But Apple itself as a company is not a thing that exists. When we acknowledge Apple as a company, we are engaging in a fiction that the officers and directors and shareholders of Apple are separate and distinct legally. But they're not really. That's just a lie that we've all decided to collectively engage in. Right. And the only way that we are all going to continue to engage in that lie is if you do not commingle your personal assets or the assets of other businesses with the entity that you're dealing with. So the number one way to have that mirage that we've created magically disappear is to not be putting money into the right accounts, to be taking money out of accounts without it being properly documented as to why that money's been removed, or using it on things that are not directly related to the business, or that there's no real legal need or right for that entity to be paying for. I think those are the biggest money mistakes, because those are the things that potentially are going to lead to tax problems, they're going to lead to accounting problems, and worst case scenario, they're going to lead to piercing the corporate veil, as we would say, or us failing to continue to engage in that fiction that you were separate and distinct from your business.
Yeah, I think that kind of thing, or it feels like that kind of thing would happen a lot more often than maybe a lot of people would like to think.
Yeah, it does. And I think especially, I mean, I get it, right? Especially if you're a single member business, it can be, it's mentally an adjustment to go from all of the money and income is coming to me directly into my personal account to it needs to touch this other account before I can technically and legally transfer it to my personal account. And that seems kind of like an unnecessary step, right? It seems like we're just creating administration that doesn't need to exist, right, especially with single member entities. And I completely understand that. But unfortunately, the law does not care that feels unnecessary. All the law cares is that
figure it out.
Yeah.
So who are some of the most fun companies that I would say, like here locally, that you've had the privilege to kind of work with? Who are some you're excited by?
So I can't necessarily talk about people that I work with, but I'll say, you know, there are so many great companies in the DFW Metroplex, in Texas, all around Texas. My gosh. You know, there's a really awesome company that I actually encountered through a deck event called Cadena Collective, and they bring in products from primarily Mexico, but other places in Latin America, and help create kind of entrepreneurial circles with the individuals that they're bringing those products in for, and they have some amazing stuff. So they're a great company. There are a ton of really, really cool nonprofits. Operation Tiny Home is a really great one. They work with homeless veterans. Her Texas, obviously, a great company that's bringing together kind of the entrepreneurial circle in Texas, female entrepreneurial circle in Texas. There's literally so many that I could name, and I know the second I get off of here, I'm going to be like, why did you not say these 5
so
companies?
Many more. Right. Yeah,
I'm
it feels like...
think of, like, my favorites. Well, I don't want to say that. Oh, not my favorites.
No.
That's like the worst language I could have used.
These are my favorites, you other guys.
Yeah.
Definitely
that's going to end up
not the favorites. Yeah, it feels like, you know, just especially between Austin and Houston and Dallas, it just feels like there's so much happening here, but there's also so much opportunity for the value that people like you in the business that you bring. I mean, because entrepreneurs, it feels like you're good in your space. You're a great graphic designer, or you're a great engineer, or whatever the case may be. But all of these other things, and like you alluded to, if you're a solopreneur, even more. Because now you're good in maybe 1, maybe 2 of these verticals, but then there's all these others that you're not. And now you're having to learn QuickBooks, so you're having to learn a software program, and you're still not really great at it. So finding that expertise, and like I think you said, I think that's the biggest thing is the education. Because if you're starting it, there's just so much that you don't know what you don't know. But being able to kind of have that baseline of separating these things, that's going to help, you know, keep everything a little bit more clean and easier to navigate as you move forward.
Yeah, well, and I think it's understanding the nuance between education and expertise. I think sometimes founders strive to be experts in every area, and that certainly just cannot, it's not a possibility. And there are certain things you shouldn't want to be experts in, right? There's absolutely no reason you should try to be a tax expert or a legal expert or a software developer in every sense. It's important to have a baseline of knowledge so that you can ask good questions and be conversant in how your business is functioning. But ultimately, it would be a waste of your time to try and transition from an educational perspective to an expertise perspective. And so I think that's really where entrepreneurs struggle a lot of times, is they're trying to bridge that gap, and it's just not necessary. You just need to know enough, exactly like you said, you need to know enough to know what you don't know, and to know what questions need to be asked. And outside of that, rely on someone else's expertise to do it. I tell clients this all the time. If we all had to rely on something that I personally coded, we would be screwed. Like, I cannot, coding is not my strength. Technical development, not my strong suit. But thankfully, I, at this point, have had enough kind of interface with the development process that I can ask good questions about it and get someone who is an expert to get me where I need to be, and have, enough basis of understanding to be conversational in it. But if you need me to sit down and code something, absolutely not. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm not going to spend my time.
Yeah, no, and I think that's exactly it. It's kind of knowing where your specialty is, and then being able to have the resources that can help kind of fill those gaps.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of times, do they come to you like on day one? Because I mean, a lot of that stuff, when it's LLC, making sure that everything is separated the right way, those are really kind of day one things that they have to do. Making your first sale, where does that go? How do I make sure that everything's funneled through the process the right way? Do people tend to come to you on day one, or is it a little further?
It varies by entrepreneur. I would say whether it's me or another attorney, it's always good to establish a relationship with some sort of legal expertise as early on as possible. Maybe you don't need any services at that point, but at least having someone that you have a pre-existing relationship with that you can lean on when you have a question, because sometimes legal questions will pop up, contracts may be presented to you, and you don't want to have to go through the process of trying to identify who you're going to use in that moment. And so I think, I tell people it's never too early to talk to an attorney. Even if there's nothing they can do for you now, it's good to have that door open and have those lines of communication clear.
Oh, that's great advice. So before we wrap up, I want to make sure that you can let everybody know how they can connect with you, how they can keep up with you, follow you, everything. So the floor is yours, however long you want it.
So they can follow me on Instagram at TX Startup Lawyer. Awesome. They can follow me on TikTok at TX Startup Lawyer, but I would not suggest anyone follow me on TikTok.
That's the only place they can follow you that's the only one that's getting linked.
I know. If it was still 2020, I would say you could follow me on Clubhouse at TX Startup Lawyer too, but I cannot tell you.
What happened to Clubhouse? That was like the thing until it wasn't.
You know what I think it is, and I say this as like, I was a Clubhouse addict. I
love the idea of it. I mean, I still do.
So I think Clubhouse really thrived in an environment where everyone was stuck in their houses. And the second everyone got out, I will also say, I think Clubhouse also thrives in environments where other forms of like video and photograph social media are not as influential for one reason or another. Yeah. And so I do think that there are certain areas where that tends to be a more successful platform. But I mean, everyone was hyped on it, right? Every major platform was creating some variation of Clubhouse there for a while. And then for me personally, I went from being on Clubhouse probably 12 hours a day to being on there no hours a day, like overnight, it felt like. Wow. My tales of Clubhouse could be like, I met someone and went to one of the world's most dangerous countries with them, completely sight unseen, just from meeting them on Clubhouse.
Well, I feel like that's a whole other story. I don't know if that's meant for now, but
no one died. It was perfectly fine. But like, to say that I leaned into Clubhouse, I like really embraced it.
You like leaned it, like opened the door, leaned all the way through to the other side, leaned in.
Yeah, I really committed to what Clubhouse was trying to do.
So for the follow-up episode, it won't be any entrepreneurial or business talk. It's strictly what happened on Clubhouse and how did she go to a dangerous country, sight unseen, and make it back.
You have a show called I Should Be Dead, but I'm not.
Episode 1 is that.
Yeah, I could share my Clubhouse story for sure.
Okay, so back to your links. Right now, it's only TikTok and used to be Clubhouse.
Only TikTok. If you want some really poorly executed TikTok dances, check out my TikTok. I'm pretty sure my only followers on TikTok are students from when I used to teach college that would add me to laugh at me.
Awesome.
I've just accepted that.
It's the best ones.
Yeah. So Instagram, I'm pretty active. LinkedIn is where I think most people connect with me. It's linkedin.com/in/J Vittorio, Vittorio, or you can just Google Jessica Vittorio and it should pop up.
Okay, awesome. Well, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait for episode 2 to hear all about.
I know, we'll do a
of...
joint podcast.
Yes, let's do it.
There you go.
Heck yeah.
I'm excited. Thanks for the invite. This has been great. I love talking. And this is always a good time. I love sharing information with entrepreneurs. So I love that you're doing this, and anything to help entrepreneurs feel a little less alone in that process, I think is great for the community.
Amen to that. And thank you again for handling with me while my overhead light over here is, just decided to completely not work halfway through. But you know what? It makes...
And I have like 8 on
You
me
have
right
like
now,
8
so
of them.
Too much.
That's why I'm kind of leaning over this way. I'm trying to get some of the side light or something because it's just dark on my side.
Turn up the one on my computer and then it'll shine through there.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like the video and comment. I love to interact. And as always, be sure to subscribe to the channel.